Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining. First off, I'd like to apologize for the postponement last week. That was completely my fault. I had to go and get married, so um, that was a big deal for me. So we did postpone that. So
Congratulations. Well worth postponing.
Thank you. Um, on the topic for tonight, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. I'd like to go back to it. It's the National Drone Week. Drone Safety Week is coming up November 4th through the 10th. And one of the things that we talked about doing was publishing some videos to release during that week coming from the FPVFC. And we've put a list together of a couple different topics that we would like to see some videos on, but obviously, we won't be able to produce all of them. And literally, what we're asking for is 30 seconds of video that you can hit maybe one of these topics, or somebody could hit one of these topics, maybe not you, but somebody you fly with that's really good at doing a vlog or something like that. I know I'm going to commit to making at least one of these videos, but also some ideas that we can kind of push out there for others to make. We'd really like to get it involved in the National Drone Safety Week because I think it has a potential to highlight a lot of the key benefits of UAS and resident sorry not residential recreational flight, and help guide the public in the right direction towards what we can do, what we actually do, and what we're actually not doing. So on that note, I've got a couple ideas for some videos. First off, what do I need to fly? So the thought process was, actually, let me copy and paste this if I can. Let's see. We'll see if this works. Yes. So what do I need to fly? Simple video collecting the things we need to fly is explained on our FPVFC homepage. So, and that would include, obviously, right there, the safety guidelines, a visual observer or a spotter, where you can fly, and either in uncontrolled, what do you need to do there? Pretty much nothing. Versus controlled airspace using the land system. Regulations apply, how regulations apply to all drones, including the sub 250. Let's see. We also have, just a quick video tutorial on how to register with the FAA, how we register, what that actually means. We register the pilot, not the drone, for recreational, whereas 107, each individual drone would need to be registered. And where to place the registration number on the drone, and maybe a couple different solutions for putting that registration number on the drone, whether it be dymo labels, engraving, stickers,
Scotch tape.
Scotch tape, whatever works for you. But just a couple different examples of how that works and where it needs to go. We also have flight preparation. Reference the pre-flight travel and racing checklist that we have on the FPVFC website. Those are pretty good. I use them from time to time, especially when I'm packing for a trip. I like to use the travel ones. Let's see, packing for the trip to the flying spot. Make sure you're not leaving anything behind. LiPo safety, how to charge safely and traveling with them. Personal safety, and etiquette of flying in a group at a race. If you race or you fly in a group, you know how important that etiquette is, right? It might be good just a video based on race events or group flying and kind of the do's and don'ts. And then we also have during the flight, staying below 400 feet, how to accurately tell that you're below 400 feet, the different types of technology that you can utilize to ensure that you're staying at that altitude or below. Spotter must have drone in line of sight, and yield right away to man aircraft, and kind of how that works and what that looks like. And we also have encountering friends, law enforcement, and adversarial public. Basically, how to respond to people, whether it's law enforcement, maybe somebody at the park. I know I've had to respond to people at the park that were a little upset that I was flying there. Kind of how that works and what that conversation should be like. Or, if a friend's nearby asking you questions while you're flying, that can be a distraction and cause somebody to get hurt. How to request a Lance authorization. So basically going through the steps in the app to get that authorization and what that looks like. And let's see, I also have a couple other ones here. How to utilize the different apps to verify the ability to fly. I know I use Kitty Hawk for the most part, and that has worked well for me. But basically, the different Kitty Hawk I know Kitty Hawk, for example, can go really in depth in what you can do with it. So, and it's not always clear on the steps you need to take to set things up. So if somebody could do a tutorial on that would be fantastic. How to review TFRs and notices to airmen. Basically, where to go to look up information and what to do with it. And I think this is pretty important. I don't see this talked a whole lot about, but what is a fail-safe protocol and how do you set it up? How to program a fail-safe protocol to keep the pilot and those around them safe. There's multiple ways to do that. And you can either do it beta flight side, you can do it transmitter side. So, and what that needs to look like for different scenarios. So I actually just saw a topic in one of the commercial UAS boards the other day, and it's kind of interesting how a lot of them set it to hover, or whereas most of the time I know I set mine to come down, just that way I know it's not going someplace where I don't want it to go. So these are a couple of topics we thought of. If there are ones that you would like to maybe try and tackle, and guys, these don't need to be professional quality. These need to be, let's get the information out there. Let's make sure the information's right. And literally, all I'm asking for is 30 seconds to a minute of what you do on one of these topics, how you make sure you adhere to these safety guidelines, or how you set up a fail-safe, or so on and so forth. Just so we have some content coming out of this National Drone Safety Week that we can participate with. As a fledgling organization, and as a startup, it's hard to put it on an event or something like that at this point in time. We hope to do that in the future, but definitely we would like to publish some content to push out there. So thoughts, questions, ideas for topics, volunteers. Anyone?
Well, I'll volunteer to make some for sure.
Okay. Well, I know I definitely want to. I want to get in on maybe how to use like the Lance authorization, how to use some of the apps and stuff like that. I think that would be some good information to put out there. But
I just saved all the notes. I'll go through them.
Okay.
I'll see if I can figure out something. See if something comes to my head.
Absolutely, and keep in mind, this is just some ideas. If you think of something else, a lot of these were pulled from our safety guidelines. And today's the 16th. Drone Safety Week doesn't start until the 4th, but and recreational flight really doesn't kick in until the weekend. So we've got a little bit of time to do this. If you need some help or you need maybe some help editing, you can feel free to hit me up. I'm happy to help with that. I know Dan's an amazing editor as well, according to his flight videos. But keep in mind, you don't have to do this in a vacuum. Get your friends involved. Maybe your flight group if you fly with a group. It's a great way to get your group name out there and get the FPVFC out there. So
yeah, I could definitely see some of those needing a group of people. Like, oh my gosh, you just plugged in, and where'd my video go? Show an example of
right,
that. Pretend that's happening. Make it kind of funny.
absolutely.
Make it happen for the realness.
Somebody says, "Oh my gosh, somebody just plugged in," and they show their drone dropping into a pile of dog poop or something.
That would be hilarious. So, speaking of the FPVFC's name getting out there, Dave is currently he is waiting to go to the DAC meeting tomorrow. Dan was able to discover that it is going to be live streamed on both on the FAA's Facebook and their YouTube, starting at 9 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow. I won't get to watch all of it, I'm sure, but I'm going to kind of chime in where I can and just see what's going on. But Dave was able to participate in one of the task groups from the last DAC involved around remote identification. And we were able to kind of get some ideas in there that would benefit recreational users. And we got mentioned in the DAC notes, not the notes, but really the meeting minutes. And to go along with some of that, and some of the concerns that we had were, what's the equipage going to look like for remote identification, and what the the ability of people to look at the remote ID information, whether it was encrypted or not. Our push was really for the amount of people looking at it should be very limited. It should be minimal to no additions to our aircraft, and it should be encrypted at every stage so that it prevents people from spoofing your ID or anything like that. So those were some of the inclusions. Dave, did I really miss anything? I know we talked like a ton about the remote ID.
Yeah, and the around the remote ID, there was another group that was charged with coming up with incentives. What would motivate people to use remote ID if during the period that it's in a voluntary stage? And so in addition, there was also a security task group. So that's written up, and they've got a number of recommendations. And then you also see that there are, as Josh mentioned early on, there are new tasking groups that will be kicked off tomorrow. Another 90-day turnaround, one of them beyond visual line of sight. That's top of the list to all of the commercial folks, and of course anyone doing long-range FPV. And one is on facility maps, and then the third one is on UTM, if I've got that list right. So.
Yep, you sure do.
The overall view of why we're excited to be involved with the FAA Drone Advisory Committee is this is very much a seek change by working from within, and so we're not trying to be antagonistic to the FAA. We're trying to be collaborative and help where we can and make changes for our own benefit. And so I think there's we're just starting to make some changes.
And for everyone who's interested, I suggest you take a look at that ebook PDF for the Drone Advisory Committee's meeting tomorrow. And you'll see some stuff in there, like they acknowledge that the recreational pilots, recreational flyers are going to be flying models that will not have any kind of remote ID on them, and that they're making plans for that and how to accommodate them in the airspace.
Right. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was a big part of the remote ID discussion. Non-equipped. So if you're non-equipped, you can utilize a Lance capability and still submit a flight plan. You have to be registered, and you identify the geographical space you're going to fly, and you get back a what's your the altitude ceiling that you're limited to, and go. And that's of course in controlled airspace.
So it's not perfect. What we have now would be better, where you don't have anything, but it seems like something we could live with, or at least I could. I don't know what other people think.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think a lot of the points that we kind of discussed as we were going through this, and keep in mind, guys, the reason we didn't talk about this before is a lot of this stuff was kind of confidential. So, it's not that we wanted to keep the community out. It's just that we were kind of coming in mid-sentence, and we had to kind of roll with the flow until we discovered kind of what was going on. So. But some of this stuff, I know, like we talked about, the encryption and limiting those who would have access to that information. And one of the things that we brought up was the ability to, and this sounds silly, but if you think about it, the first point of contact for non-equipped was you would define an area on a map and you would be able to fly 400 feet from that area. It's not a lot of space, especially for people with fixed wing or even longer mid-range quads. Some parks are much bigger than that, and visual line of sight is much further than that. So we talked about being able to define your area on the map for non-equipped. So different ideas that we felt would benefit the community within the thought process that remote ID is coming. How do we make it as non-intrusive into our hobby as possible? SAR, is remote ID limited to controlled airspace? No, it's not going to be limited to controlled airspace. Lance is limited to controlled airspace, but remote ID will most definitely. However, there may be, if you read through the link that I posted and you go through the remote ID, in the incentive portions, they're talking about providing incentives for people who are participating in remote ID, being able to fly in more places, be first in line for waivers for night operations and operations over people, as well as local, like city and state regulations being kind of eased up on people who participate in remote ID. So those are some of the starting incentives that are being discussed. We won't know officially what that rolls out as until I'm sure they're going to start submitting for NPRMs pretty soon on some of these topics. So we'll see what that rolls out as once that comes out. But
right, and we're hoping the remote ID NRPM is December 2019.
Yep. So remote ID, recreational, to kind of touch on that, a lot of that is going to fall under the non-equipped. So if you are in there and you see non-equipped, that's where recreational is going to kind of fall under.
But you're right, Sar, that the Drone Advisory Committee is definitely more focused on commercial than they are in recreational, which
Absolutely.
is why we really need to be there and keep reminding them, hey, there's other people out here too.
Yep.
Yeah. So is the non-equipped basically going to be like shielded operations?
So no. non-equipped remote ID is
I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, that might have come across wrong. I mean, kind of like in the idea that non-equipped obviously means that you don't have the transponder, but
correct.
you can request to fly here, and basically, what if tomorrow they say that, non-equipped can request to fly wherever they want, but they only get 100-foot ceiling.
Right, and the thought process is that remote ID is going to be one of those requirements in order to fly. And whether you're non-equipped or equipped, but let's focus on the non-equipped because 99% of us are going to be non-equipped. Basically, what that would look like is similar to what you're doing with Lance. You put in your location into an app on the cell phone, and you basically are self-reporting that you're flying there. That way, if there's an incident, then law enforcement would be able to say, okay, so and so with registration number this was flying there. They can go to the FAA. FAA can look up information on who that was and direct law enforcement on the next steps that they needed to take. So that's the thought process behind the non-equipped. And so it's basically a self-reporting feature, whereas people with equipped aircraft, it would be automatic. It's going to function either over Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, or even perhaps the 4 or 5G kind of
So
situation.
one thing near the beginning of that document I found extra interesting and almost fits into shielded operations was when it said that the Drone Advisory Committee was going to discuss pain points or areas where they feel the UAS operations may be possible, either given restrictions or during limited times. For example, opening up operations in a long street. Well, they got some weird wording here. In areas where they are currently prohibited as long as the UAS remain at or below the level of the highest buildings. This would
Yeah,
allow drone work for
I did see
surveys.
that, and I thought that
So,
was
like,
pretty interesting.
yeah, that definitely sounds a lot like shielded operations to me. Not exactly, but
It does.
getting into that realm.
Yeah,
That's
and
good.
it's more. I mean, it is geared more towards the commercial side for like surveying. I know, like around me, I've seen drones being used when they're building freeways, or the sound walls along freeways
Right, so
to
I was thinking
ensure
if there's sort of some leeway there or an exception for that use case, then we could fit
we
under
can.
that for the same reason, right? We're not surveying anything, but we're flying in those same sort of circumstances. If that's safe, then so is what we're
Bruce,
doing.
Bruce, kind of explain your question for me.
I think it's related to some of the European regulations now about every drone is going to have to be electronically conspicuous, so it's going to have a broadcasting remote ID of some sort on it.
There's a difference
So-
between remote ID and electronic conspicuity. Conspicuity is like a transponder like ADS-B where you're visible to air traffic control. Remote ID is something that operates over a much shorter range. So if someone sees your drone flying, a law enforcement officer, he can pull out a smartphone and find the ID of that drone. So there is a distinction between the two. And so hopefully both systems will be the same. Otherwise, we end up with two pieces of electronics on our equipment.
So the idea is that OEM manufacturers such as like DJI would have the network or the equipped remote ID. It's going to be something similar that talks via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, or even cell phone signals. Whereas the hobbyist would be non-equipped, basically self-report via an app. So basically the technology that law enforcement or FAA would use to see who's flying would be all grouped together, but it would be two different scenarios. They're trying to kind of bring commercial and recreational together, but they understand that there's an equipage difference between them.
Right.
Does that make
Right.
sense?
And to build on that, the remote ID that was put forward points to the ASTM F38 standard that's under ballot right now, and it will be an international standard. The view that will hopefully be picked up by some of the leading FAA counterparts around the world, and that will define how we could create remote ID, and then from there, the having an aircraft be conspicuous is more discussed along the lines of DAA, or detect and avoid. And so what we're pushing for on being conspicuous is we would like to have manned aircraft be conspicuous and have UAS be able to perform a detect and avoid. That allows for a much smaller, lighter, and less complexity for the UAS.
I did also, when I was talking with Kevin Morris, the FAA's drone guy, he mentioned flat out that there's no way that the ADS-B system in the United States could handle the drone traffic. There's just so much of that, it would just flood the system, and that it's not a good idea. So I don't see the FAA pushing that at all.
Saturate the bandwidth. Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine if any ADS-B technology was equipped on drones, it's going to be is it receive only, where it's only
That's right.
bringing in signals and reacting to the signals it's sensing. So
exactly, right.
But,
ADS-B.
yeah.
Right.
Thank you. So,
and that is what DJI has committed to incorporate into their drones above 250 grams manufactured in 2020 and beyond.
That's good to know, considering the trouble that I've seen most DJI pilots cause.
That's fun. So I think some of these new task groups that are going to be coming out of tomorrow's DIC are going to be interesting. I am particularly interested, as I'm sure a lot of you are on the beyond visual line of sight and how that'll work. And keep in mind, again, a lot of this is going to be kind of skewed towards commercial, but the nice part is that we're by participating in these processes, that we're able to kind of bring the recreational thought processes into the FAA and make sure that we are heard and that we're being considered, because
they may not listen to us, but at least we're given a chance.
Yep. And by doing so, we're able to kind of keep this stuff minimalistic for what we need to continue on with our hobby.
Yeah, because they haven't really put down a definitive line between commercial and recreational yet.
No. And I mean, so I'll be really looking forward to some of these new tasking groups, the 90-day turnaround. While busy, it's kind of nice that things are moving at a decent pace now.
Right.
I'd like to see that continue.
And the way this process works, of course, is that the Drone Advisory Committee is a combination. It's predominantly private, so there are not many public folks involved, but they are there. There's FDNY, there's NYPD, there's airport personnel, etc. But a lot of commercial industry folks. They're providing input to the FAA integration office. The integration office will turn the work over to rulemaking folks in the FAA, and then we'll see notice of rules coming out that go up for public comment. So that's the process that we're in the midst of.
So,
so get the community ready for public comments.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's why I mentioned the December 2019 is, I would suggest, a very important time frame for the remote ID comment period.
There is that one, and then there's also, and I'm trying to find the page as I'm scrolling through this quickly.
Now, because my life is quite hectic, are you guys going to be able to post in here or somewhere so that I would be able to remember?
Absolutely.
yes, we'll be soliciting help and comments.
All right.
That
I
reminds
got
me.
quite a few groups that will probably definitely comment on that.
I need to post on our Facebook about the live stream tomorrow of the DAC so that people can tune into it.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So, let's see. So, just a little bit of an update. The request for information for the knowledge test, administration of the knowledge test that closed middle of last month, almost a full month ago. The FAA did get 40 submissions. The examination board is currently drafting the knowledge test content. And they're saying that the work is 95% complete, and the board includes representatives from the AMA and the Small UAV Coalition. Would have been nice to be a part of that, but I would imagine that we will be seeing some more information coming out on the knowledge test pretty quickly. Yeah, ASTM F38. So looks like they're going to be sending out the test designees around December. So hopefully we hear back soon on that. And kind of go from there. So let's see.
Since I'm going through the Facebook,
Yeah.
what happened with the AMA and that whole letter that was sent out? All of a sudden now they're going to be pushing for what? I didn't really catch the whole.
So the thought process is that the AMA was pushing for some exemptions for their fixed flight areas from the 400-foot ceiling on recreational flight.
Right.
And it seems like the FAA has basically come back and said, no, that's not going to happen. So that's what that's about. So yeah, it's pretty interesting how that worked out.
So are they like going to be more heavily involved and care about all of this more now?
I can't speak to what they are going to be doing. I do know that they are a part of the DAC. It does appear that they are working on creating the knowledge exam test questions and content. Beyond that, I can't speak to what they are or aren't doing.
Well, at least we got like half the hobbyists in there.
Yeah, I mean the AMA is a large organization. They have well over 200,000 members. But you know, and they definitely, in terms of quantity of members, beat us out by a long shot. But we're relatively new. They've been at it for many, many, many decades. So, you know, I would look to anybody with an interest in model aviation to want to be helping with maintaining our freedoms with flying in any way that they can. That's why we're here, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. So
the other thing is the approach that the AMA took was they've been working with the FAA. They were upset that they did not get the 700 and 1200 foot AGL ceilings in uncontrolled airspace, and they said that they've been doing everything trying to talk with everyone in the FAA they could, and so as a last resort they're going to Congress to lobby for change to the FAA. So the approach that we're preferring to take is to work collaboratively with the FAA, figure out a way to make the change, get the change that we can, and would really rather not go to Congress and literally lobby for change, and so that's what the AMA has been doing in their push. Now, as we said, the AMA has been working with the FAA on these specific programs back about till 2015.
That kind of makes me happy. They're lobbying against them. I mean, the only thing that I would really want them to lobby for is the repeal of the amendments to the Reauthorization Act of 2018, because I believe that they should have to have congressional approval in order to create laws. They should not have the ultimate power that they do.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I've not heard anyone pressing that.
Yeah. I don't know, that maybe it's just from the generational thing, because like when it comes to that scared the crap out of me when I first read that, because I was always taught that once you start seeing that happen with one agency, it's going to happen with other ones too.
Right. At least with Congress being somewhat dysfunctional, you got some time.
That's one way to put it. Well, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. I'm curious. I feel like it was it doesn't feel right that they were going to get an exemption that nobody else got. So I mean,
Well, it's shady how they did.
yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. But at any rate,
sorry, I'm pretty good at digression.
no, you're fine. Nothing is ever off topic. We just need to swing back around. So so if you do have any ideas on videos or articles for Drone Safety Week, articles are kind of my specialty, but I will commit to doing a video. And or you want to take on one of the posted ones, please reach out to one of us, Dan, Dave, or I, and let us know. And we're happy to provide you with some help if we can. We do have video resources. I know Dan had linked those a couple days ago in the chat, or I think they were in, where were they? Design and merch chat. We linked a couple of those. So there are some assets there if you want to use those. I'll be making one, and we know Dan will be making one. So we got 2 of them knocked out. So if you'd like to make one, let us know, and we will jump on those and give you whatever help we can. If you do have any questions for Dave and the DAC, please let us know about that as well. If you can, check out the live stream tomorrow. I'll have that on and off during the day, so I can kind of check out what's going on. Let's see, Sar, any thoughts on page 86? Let me look at that real quick before we wrap up. Looking. The top slide. Let's see.
So page 86, yeah, the top of it says FAA Reauthorization Act 2018, Section 372, directs the FAA to establish a pilot program to use available remote detection and identification technologies for safety and enforcement actions to pursue non-compliant UAS operators.
I have no idea what that's going to look like or what that did look like. I haven't heard anything, and I don't know. Dan, have you heard anything on some of your sources?
No, I don't think so.
So it looks like they might have been using, I would imagine that they're probably using some kind of frequency or frequency spammers or some kind of microphone sound sensing technology. I know it exists for UAS.
Was this one of those test site things that maybe Zoe went to?
Maybe.
And they've gone outside of the test sites. They have done some counter UAS mostly around stadia, and just it happened around the Super Bowl, and there was another recent one where the FAA working in working with the FBI as well as local law enforcement created a geofence around a stadium. So, I mean, that's happening.
Let's see. Yeah, so I haven't heard any news come out of that, so but I will keep my eyes open, because if somebody got, tagged, I'm sure they'll have some more information somewhere, either on Facebook, Reddit, or some of the other places where they stash information. So, any other questions, concerns, comments? All right, guys. Well, I'd like to thank you all for joining tonight, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Definitely.
Thanks,
Y'all
everyone.
have a good night.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Have a good one.